Hello, everybody, and welcome to this new episode of the Lunar Temple Podcast. So, I am going to change the way that I am offering these episodes because, as you've probably realized over the last few weeks, I haven't been able to do them weekly. And actually, I feel like it's a bit of a stretch right now to be able to do a weekly episode. It's just that life with a little 2-year-old is really full on. And yeah, I just want to give myself a little bit more space around things. So for my own self-care. And yeah, also just say that I'm not always starting or so often starting an episode with an apology that there wasn't one the previous week. So I was choosing between doing it monthly, and then I thought that just doesn't feel like I'm connecting with you enough. So what I've thought I will do, and this is subject to change because that is life, is I think I would like to do an episode for the full moon and an episode for the new moon. So it'd be twice a month. And that will hopefully kind of give us enough to connect with and explore together. But yeah, it just gives me a little bit of time in between as well. So what we're going to be looking at in this episode, then, we are here on Monday, the 6th of March, and tomorrow we welcome in the full moon in Virgo. So we're going to talk about that in this episode, and we're going to talk a little bit about what is going on this month. And we will, of course, then have another episode for the new moon in Aries, which is later on in March. So yeah, first of all, just having a little check in, as we so often do in these episodes, with how you are and how you're feeling and how February was. I know that I haven't seen you for a couple of weeks. So yeah, how did February move through you? Was it an easy month? Was it a joyful month? Was it a difficult month? Was it a bit of a mixed bag? And yeah, what are you feeling that you need from this month of March? Weather-wise, we're still in that liminal space. It's interesting when you look at the folklore associated with March, there's a lot of this kind of battle between winter and spring. And in the folklore associated with the Cailleach, so from Ireland and Scotland, there's a lot of stories in March around the Cailleach just not wanting to go down, not wanting to relinquish her control. So she is the crone or the hag of winter, and she's associated with well, many things. She's sort of a creatrix goddess. So one of the first beings, the first deities. She created a lot of the landscape. So she's associated with mountains and rocks and sacred wells and lakes. She's also associated with winter weather and particularly really strong winds and storms. So I believe that there are certain parts of Scotland where a storm is called a Cailleach. So when we get to sort of end of February and into March, there is this real play between end of winter and the start of spring. And we see this a lot, like it can be very stormy, or it can be very icy or very windy and very cold. And then we can then get these really warm, mild, blue skied spring days. And that's sort of associated with Bridget's return and her reappearing as the maiden and bringing new growth and bringing positivity and bringing inspiration and that turning of the wheel. But what's interesting from a health point of view, from a self-care point of view, is this changeable weather that we experience at this time of year, particularly when I'm talking from the point of view of the UK. That's where I am. It's And if it's the same for you where you're living in the northern hemisphere and you're feeling this like push pull, it does have an impact on our nervous system. It has an impact on our immune system. So it's really, really key at this time of year to really take care of ourselves. And Ayurvedic medicine relates to this time of year as Kapha season. And I find that really helpful when you look at Ayurveda, because it associates this time of year with cold and damp. And when we look at the earth, it is cold and damp, and that shows up in our body. So what we need at this time of year is warming foods, beautiful spices, things like ginger and cinnamon and nutmeg, and thinking about how we are keeping warm, even on those days where it is very spring-like. The winds can still be really, really cold. So I had this experience last week. Last week was the reason that I didn't do the episode last week, was because I'd gotten quite poorly and I had been doing stuff in the garden, and I must admit I wasn't wrapped up warm enough, and my back was I think my jumper kept lifting up, so my back was exposed to that really chilly wind, and I ended up not quite getting one, but sort of feeling on the borderline of having some kind of like water infection. And I was then in bed and I was having to sleep it off, and it made me think, this is the thing, it can be very deceiving at this time of year where we get these sunny days and we're out in the garden because we're trying to get things ready and we're planting things, or we're weeding, or we're just outside a little bit more at this time of year. And I think we do forget to protect ourselves. So I wanted to bring that into this episode of just like, until we're really in what I would call established spring, sort of more late March, early April. Yeah, like please, like wrap it warm. Think about keeping the central part of your body nice and warm, that kidney area, the core of the body. And then these herbs that can really support at this time of year, as I said, things like ginger. I've been drinking a lot of ginger tea, ginger and turmeric. And I've also been supporting myself with essential oils as well. So again, like ginger and rosemary, and then rubbing that. So obviously not straight on the skin with the base oil, but using that on my feet before bed, and trying to remember to do that in the morning as well, and just getting those essential oils to help support my body at this time of year as well. So yeah, warmth until we feel the earth is warming up. And I was watching, I think there's an episode of Gardener's World, which has become my new favorite thing now. So while all is asleep, I get to watch a little cheeky episode of that. But some of the things that he was talking about, the presenter on there was talking about when things are ready to plant for spring, and he said, if you just feel the earth and it feels warm to the touch, then it's ready to plant. I can't remember what he was planting, but I just thought sometimes we're still quite disconnected from the earth, and we're very disconnected from the earth, I think. And we can get kind of carried away with the idea of spring, but we're not necessarily interacting with what is actually present. And I think being in the garden, or being outside and just really paying attention, and sort of maybe doing that, like putting your hand in the soil and going, do you know what, it is really, really cold still, and it's really, really damp. Therefore, this is the indication that like my body is still in that in that state too. So I need to keep warm. I need to try and help get that damp out of my body. And then when the soil starts to warm up, we can think, yeah, this is that time, this that shift, I don't need to wrap up as warm, and we can start to shift from those warming spices to then starting to think about working with our plant allies that then begin to appear in established spring. So nettles will begin to reawaken at this time of year-ish. So they are a plant associated or ruled by Aries. So they normally start to appear around Aries season, and dandelions too. So one of the things that I really love to connect with the spring equinox, which is later on in this month, is it's nature's new year. That's how I think of it, and we'll explore this more in our new moon in Aries episode, because spring equinox happens on the Monday and then the new moon in Aries is on the Tuesday. But you know, it is Aries season is the start of a new zodiac cycle, so it is an astrological new year. But I feel like it's nature's new year because all of the green really starts to reappear, and those kind of detoxing, gently cleansing herbs begin to appear, like your dandelions and your nettles. And I learned something really interesting the other day about nettle, that you know, in medieval times, people would eat nettles for almost as a superfood, for want of a better description, because there wasn't any, they were in that liminal space of not having any crops yet really to eat, and the winter stores really running low. And because nettle is so jam-packed with minerals and nutrients and antioxidants, it was this kind of almost complete food source. So people used to eat them to sustain them before that you could get more nourishment from crops. So yeah, I just find that really interesting. So all that talk that we hear in January about detoxing and cleansing and purification is not relevant to what is happening in the natural world. These types of cleansing and detoxing plants aren't even around until March, and late March usually. So again, like, take your cues from the natural world. So when you see abundance of nettle, when you see abundance of dandelion, you can think to yourself, now this is the time of year when I can begin to start working with these and start to support this transition from winter into spring. You know, so thinking about gently cleansing the system, helping the lymphatic system, helping to get things moving again after the winter months. But it's all very gentle and subtle, like the natural world, so nothing too extreme. But yeah, nettle and dandelion and burdock too are wonderful herbs to support yourself through spring, to give yourself a huge antioxidant boost. They're amazing protectors for our and defenders for our immune system. And they really help to energize and lift us up as well. So yeah, those are, well, for me anyway, my herb and plant allies for the spring, and particularly for Aries season. So let's talk about the full moon in Virgo. I'm just going to have a little swig of my tea. So Virgo full moon happening tomorrow, so Tuesday the 7th of March, this is a really lovely, I think anyway, like a really lovely sign to work with. Virgo is earth, it is kind of priestess energy, herbalist energy. It's associated a lot with the gathering of crops and herbs and harvest, whether that is at this point with the full moon in Virgo, where we're sort of tail end of winter and early spring, or when we get to Virgo season later on in the year with autumn, when it's to do with the harvesting of crops in that way. So Virgo is, as well as it being a very spiritual sign, kind of connected to that beautiful priestess energy, it's also very practical. So Virgos are very organized. They can be perfectionists. They kind of like everything to be in order. But this is a powerful full moon. If you think of those qualities of organization, you know, looking at the details of things, wanting things to be perfect, which of course they never are, but sometimes it's a nice quality to lean into, that looking at those details and taking that kind of care, then this can be a really powerful full moon for really starting now to look at our intentions for the rest of the year that we've been working with, you know, all the way through since winter solstice, and starting to think, okay, how now can I practically put these things into place. So Virgo kind of encourages us to really do the work. So to sit down and write lists and get things out and get organized and really look at how you can manifest these goals, these wishes. And this energy works really, really well with its polarity of Pisces. So Pisces new moon, which we had a couple of weeks ago. Pisces is all about the dreaming. We talked about this in the last episode. So it's all that kind of subconscious mind, otherworldly, ethereal, deeply into the intuition, deeply into that kind of imaginative, dreamlike space. But sometimes the shadow side of Pisces means that it finds it really difficult to just cope with the realities of life, the practicalities of life. So they can be these incredible artists, for example, but then just cannot do their tax return. Something like this. It's just there's an inability to be present, to be here, and to be able to be in the world. So Virgo can really help that, because Virgo has that balance between being incredibly spiritual, but also being really earthed and present and anchored, and having that ability to manifest these things out on the material plane. So this can be a really, really powerful time to think about all that has kind of inspired you and moved through you through Pisces season so far. What were your intentions at the Pisces new moon? What has been really present for you during this time? And then Virgo is going to say, okay, well, how are we actually going to do this then? So I don't know, in Pisces season, maybe you've had a lot of inspiration come through, and there's a new project you want to get off the ground, or there's a new direction for your business or your career or something like that. And you've been all in that space of dreaming it and the inspiration and gathering all of that. And Virgo now is like, let's really look at this from a practical point of view. So it's almost like within yourself, it's almost like becoming your own business mentor. Being able to sit down and with yourself and be like, these ideas are great, like I love these ideas, but let's be realistic, like how can we actually make this happen? How can we move forward? We don't just want them all to stay in the ether. How can we bring them down and out into the world? And that can be nice too when you think of the image of Virgos. It's often depicted as that maiden carrying the wheat, I think, but like that sense of harvest. So thinking of of harvesting your own ideas at this point. I know it's not autumn, but we can still think of harvesting or gathering. What are all these jewels and gems and ideas and inspirations that you have been working with through Pisces, and how now can we actually get something out of them, make them tangible, make them manifest. Pisces and Virgo can really, really help each other. So we've looked at how Virgo helps Pisces, but Pisces can help Virgo too, because sometimes if Virgo is too much in the perfectionism, in the organization, in the structure, in getting everything, exactly how they want it to be, Pisces can kind of pull them back in to that dreamy, imaginative other world and say, what, just relax a little bit and come back to your soul, like really check in with your soul self, and then we'll come back and we'll look at all this again. So this is how we can begin to use the new and the full moon to shine light off one another. And it's an interesting thing to look at too. Virgo rules our sort of habits and health and routines and things like that. But when we look at habits and maybe patterns, I want you to have a think about over the last few years, if you are stuck in a little bit of a habit of having all these amazing ideas in Pisces season, but then never moving them any further forward, because this can be something that we can start to work with. So Aries season is going to help us with that too, because it's cardinal fire. and it can really get things started. But I want you to think about that. Just think, yeah. Like often, like wintertime, I have all these ideas and I have all these intentions for the year, and then I just don't seem to be able to run with them, or I don't seem to be able to make them manifest. So have a little look at that. And if that's something that has been happening for you, maybe looking at the blockages around those things. So what is happening? Like, why am I having these incredible ideas and then not able to take them any more forward? So always remember, with your full moon, the full moon is shining its light on our shadows. It's illuminating the things that need healing, the things that need our attention, the things that need to be seen. And it's not always comfortable. Full moons are, well, I would say full moons are rarely comfortable. They bring a lot up to the surface. That is the point. And it's hopefully every month we're getting more and more of an insight into ourselves, into our blockages, into our path, into how we can move forward. But we have to listen and pay attention, not just kind of go, oh, that full moon was really irritating, or that full moon made me really angry, and then we forget about it. You think, what was it about that? Like, what are your triggers? What is it showing us? And what needs healing? This is the other aspect of Virgo too. It is very healing. It's very much associated with the archetype of the healer, or the wise woman, the medicine woman. And it's a lot to do with health. As I said, it rules kind of health and habits and routines. And this is a really great time of year, moving into spring, to think about all of that. Like, how is my self-care? How is my health? What are my patterns? What are my habits? And how can I begin to bring some balance into these areas of my life? So what we look specifically at with Virgo and Pisces is the balance that we have between our practical daily life and our spiritual life, and hopefully finding this really beautiful ability for them to coexist. So it's not that we are always away with the fairies and we never attend to our practical life, or that we are only ever invested in the day-to-day and we never have time for our spiritual life. So that is what the Virgo and Pisces are helping us with. Where is that balance? Both are important, both are valid. And I love this quote of being in the world but not of the world. So I find that is a really lovely empowered Pisces and a really empowered Virgo. So it means for a Pisces, they are in the world, they're showing up, they're doing what needs to be done, filling out their tax returns and, doing the daily life stuff, but understanding that that's not the be all and end all, and that there is this incredible other world and this spiritual life, and that is all really important and really valid. And then the same for Virgo, it's bringing that balance there. That empowered Virgo is the same thing. So a really healthy, thriving spiritual practice, but with that practical daily life in balance too. So lots of things to think about. But yeah, it's a really nice full moon to think about your priestess archetype. Pisces really lends itself to priestess energy as well, because it's so intuitive, because it's so connected to other world, because it's so like enamored by the ethereal, the mystical, the mythological. And Virgo too is just it's almost more of a temple priestess. I see as Virgo, it's very much associated with like goddess Vesta and Hestia, who really serve the temple flame. So thinking of that too, like, does that resonate with you? How does the priestess archetype speak to you? The other part of Virgo is sacred service. And I would say that's the same with Pisces too, because it's often one of its archetypes is the teacher, the spiritual teacher, or the philosopher. And so that they kind of help us into that too, picking up some of the threads from the new moon in Capricorn. But what is your sacred service? What is your dharma, your gift to this world, and how can you really weave that into the rest of this year? So on that note, I have something very exciting to share with you. Some of you know this already. Some of you have put your names down already, which is amazing. But yeah, one of the things that I've done myself the last few years is, and not intentionally, I just noticed it this year. I was like, yeah, this is something that has happened every year. So this is obviously what I do. But so Pisces season is really when I kind of, not deliberately, as I said, but I sort of distance myself a little bit from the day-to-day world. And I have a lot more, I give a lot more time to connections, to my goddesses that I work with, to my intuition. I do a lot more reading, I do a lot more divining, I do a lot more kind of dream work and all of that, all those really like Piscean qualities. And I will have been doing this from Samhain anyway, because I try and do that for the whole of that winter season. This is that time where I plan or alchemize my work for the following year. So this time last year, I'd got the idea was forming. It had been brewing all through the winter, but then Pisces season was where everything kind of got pulled together, which is when I came up with the idea for the 12-month course for the Green Witches year. And I spent the rest of the year practically bringing it into fruition. This is what I'm talking about. So I dreamt it all up, like got all the inspiration, gathered all the resources. And then, as I said, the rest of the year was like, okay, and how's this actually going to work? And, how am I actually going to get people on it? And, all the practical sides to it. And this year, what has come through is to offer a priestess training. So this is something that's been pulling at the edges of my mental awareness, intuition, for a little bit of time. And it hadn't felt like the right time. I still wanted to really dedicate to my own studies. I mean, I initiated with Mother House of the Goddess last year as Priestess of Goddess. So I'd done 2 years with Kimberly Moore. But I mean, prior to that, I've been, kind of working in that capacity for a lot longer, probably about 8 or 9 years now. Maybe even a little bit longer than that because of my time, my sort of 4 or 5 years in the temple in Australia. So I was a meditation teacher. I trained meditation teachers. I ran retreats. I was incredibly immersed and dedicated to that whole world. And I lived in the temple, I worked in the temple, did some really intense retreats, really intense teacher trainings. And so I feel like I've been living that temple priestess life for, probably about a decade. And as I said, it kind of been, floating around this idea. And I thought, I don't know. And then the last few weeks, all of this stuff has just kind of fallen into place. And so what I'm going to offer next year is a priestess training really based around, so this will be a Sisters of the Moon priestess training, which is my kind of online presence, my platform where I run all my mystery school content. So it's all going to be focused around Avalon. So this is not what I was expecting when I was going to be offering a priestess training. I just thought, I didn't know what aspect it was going to be, but I wasn't expecting that. But that is what is coming through and what I'm being asked to do. And since starting to kind of piece things together, everything is just falling into place, all these amazing synchronicities. So a big part of the priestess training is going to be kind of reclaiming these stories of goddesses that we have been told are really not who they are. So the main goddess for the course will be Morgana, who is pretty much always depicted as evil, this kind of evil enchantress or evil sorceress. And, you know, actually, you know, this goddess, this priestess of Avalon, she was a healer, a herbalist, a medicine woman, and really stood for the protection of people who were honoring earth-based practices, earth-based religion. So her story has been really, really twisted and changed. And a lot of people that I've been teaching the last few years feel really drawn to her, but feel that they just don't have a way to connect with her in the way that she is. So we're going to be focusing a lot on her, but we're also going to be working with the Lady of the Lake. We're going to be working with Guinevere. And again, a reclaimed Guinevere, because she's often portrayed in a very passive way. She's very shamed for, you know, infidelity. And the story, a lot of these stories from Arthurian myth, the characters, the female characters or goddesses are very disempowered. So we're going to be looking at that. But we're also going to be looking at the sacred sites of England. We're going to be looking at ley lines. We're going to be looking at dragon energy. We're going to be looking at what it means to be a modern day priestess. So how we can bring this ancient wisdom into our modern lives. Like, what does that look like? What does that mean? We're going to be talking a lot about healing the feminine and healing the earth, you know, and really reclaiming so much of these practices. So I'm very excited about it. We're probably going to begin in January next year. It will be a year, and it will be online because it makes it more accessible to everybody, and it just works at the moment with the other courses that I've been doing. It just seems to work really well. Might try and plan some kind of sacred visit as a group if we can, but we'll see how that all goes. So yeah, if you are interested, just get in touch. I'll have more information soon, and I'll have like a proper page that you can look at and all of that. But I've already had quite a lot of people who have put their names down for next year. These people who I've been working with for a long time anyway. And they just want to take their practice to the next level. So I'm probably not going to open it up for enrollment to that larger group. I think I would like it to be a little bit more contained. So yeah, do please get in touch if you want me to put your name on the list of people who are interested. I'm going to be keeping this very, very affordable. There are some trainings out there that are really out of reach financially, and I want mine to be something people can afford to do. So yeah, there'll be payment plans and things like that, but it won't be expensive. So yeah, excited to share that with you. It felt really nice to share that with you with this Virgo full moon, because I think so many people want to take that next step. They want to deepen their spiritual practice, and that is really what we're going to be exploring too, like how to hold space, how to have a magical life, how to you know, connect with these incredible goddesses, connect to the land, connect to this ancient wisdom. But we'll also be looking at things too, you know, how to understand past and future lives, you know, things that can really help us to hold space and to feel more connected with the spiritual practice. So yeah, more on that to come, but do get in touch if you are interested. And I think that is it for today. So enjoy full moon tomorrow. Give yourself some space and time to journal about what's coming up for you. Think about some of the things I've asked you to think about today. And we will be back. I'll be back on the 20th. So 20th of March is the spring equinox. The sun moves into Aries. It is the dark moon. And then the new moon in Aries is on the Tuesday. So I'll be back to talk about that. So to talk about the spring equinox and what it can represent, how you can work with its energy, a little bit of history as usual, a little bit of folklore as usual, and then really welcoming in nature's new year and the astrological new year. All right, so I hope that you have beautiful full moon, and I will see you all again soon. All right, take care, everyone.